Morning all. It's just still morning here. It's 11:36 in the AM. I'm on my way to pick up Dan for another episode of The Plan. Today, oh hello, DPD suddenly braking and stopping in the middle of the road with no indicator. Thanks mate. Today we're going to be looking at what did our schools get wrong. I went to school in the 80s, Dan went to school in the 90s pretty much. It's changed a lot since then, schooling. But what did they get wrong? What could they have done better? Let's get into it. We're back again for another one of these bijou chats.
Is it The Plan? Yes, it is.
Is it The Plan? It is. What we're going to talk about today is what did school get wrong while we were there. I was there in the 80s, I guess you were there in the 90s.
I was. I did primary school in the 80s.
Yeah, I think I did I did infant school in the 70s, primary school and secondary school in the 90s. Left in 1990, so yeah, just scraped into the 90s. But yeah, I'm just thinking about the things that school got wrong, and probably still does in a lot of cases. I know that in my case, there was a constant frustration with the whole Thank you.
You're welcome.
With the fact that I had dyslexia, which wasn't sussed out until it was a bit too late. So much so that when I was at infant school, I was writing, I'm left-handed, but I was made to write right-handed because they said I wasn't allowed to write on my left. And every time I wrote on my left, I wrote in perfect mirror writing, going from right to left. And they'd just look at me like I'm mental, rather than doing anything about it. So there was that stuff, but then I always thought that some people just don't fit in at school. Some people need to learn a different way, and rows of desks and someone at the front telling you what to do is how school was set up 200 years ago, and they're still doing that.
They still do that now.
Yeah.
It's the Hugh Grant saying, not Sir Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant was saying recently, wasn't it, the problem that parents have with children and their screens.
Yeah.
You enrol your child in a new school, and they say, we're very pleased to say, every child in this school will be issued with a brand new Amazon pad or an iPad. And you're thinking, for God's sake.
Trying to get them off the screens.
Trying to get them off the screens, yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, it's school, in my opinion, is backwards, horrendous.
Yeah.
You know, but sending individual children all dressed the same to the same place to be taught, you know, paying teachers, what, £30,000 a year?
Something like that.
How are you supposed to inspire children that don't want to fucking learn anything for £30,000 a year?
Yeah.
I didn't want to learn anything at 16. Now,
No.
desperate to learn.
Yeah.
16?
No, it's the wrong age, isn't it?
Yeah,
I remember
it is.
my deputy head at secondary school. He was also the head of discipline, which gives you a little clue as to what the school was like. But he was a really nice guy. He was a very fair bloke. Although he was the guy that did give me the cane a couple of times, I always liked him. He always used to say, school is all wrong. You should be doing this stuff later in life. He says, no, at your age, life is amazing and you just want to explore and try new things. Getting you to sit still and learn stuff, it's just the wrong time of life to be doing it.
It's making you. You know.
Yeah, making you, and it's much easier when you want to learn, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, like you're doing now, you want to learn, therefore you're learning and you're putting in the effort.
I've got a young daughter you sent to nursery. She's desperate to go to nursery because they do fun stuff that intrigues them.
Yeah.
But as soon as, it's just lumping everybody in together, isn't it? It's.
I think that's my biggest bugbear with school is, you know, especially if you do struggle with it. I very much felt that, like the archetypal square peg in a round hole. I couldn't understand a lot of the stuff that was going on, and I struggled. And you feel different, and that's not nice when you're that kind of age.
I was bullied as well by teachers for being different.
Yeah.
And if you're out there, you know who you are, Mr. Pope. Yeah.
I don't think I was bullied as such, but I had some problems with just wrongful expectations. I had a very, very bright sister and brother who were at the same school before me. And my teachers, literally, when they saw me turn up for school in secondary school, said, "Oh, another Vincent. You know, we're expecting great things from you." And I just thought, I'm not going to be able to keep up. I'm just not.
My two brothers suffered. My younger brother suffered from that.
Really?
Yeah, following me in.
Obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, your Dan Peters' little brothers were not expecting anything.
I preferred that.
I was in I was in the school band, and they'd do things like they would limit my access to musical equipment if I didn't play for the rugby team.
Yeah.
If I didn't play what they wanted me to play, they wouldn't allow me. You know, you weren't allowed on the new drum kit. Which was actually, when you look back, worth about 250 quid.
Yeah, exactly.
Compared to the fucking jumble sale of a drum kit they had in the room next door, you know.
There was a lot of that stuff. So
However, music rooms were good for other things like snogging.
Well, yeah, there is that. At my school, if you were on the football team, you were automatically in the cricket team. And if you were in football team and the cricket team, you were first to be picked for the basketball team. Now, I didn't care much about football by the time I got to secondary school. I'd been and done that. I did like cricket, and I was all right at it, and it used to give me the that although I did get picked, I was always one of the last to be picked because I wasn't in the football team.
Yeah.
But then when we started playing basketball, I was good at basketball. That was one of the things I was naturally good at. It was quite hard to get in the basketball team because I didn't play any other sports. And they prioritise all the sporty ones. And it's like, but I'm good at this.
Yeah.
I did eventually get there, but it's like, it's annoying.
Yeah.
But that's schools. They pigeonhole you. And they make it easy for themselves, I would say, sometimes.
Well, to be honest, for £30,000 a year, Sean, so would I. You know.
Is that really what teachers do?
Yeah. Yeah, let's have a look now. Let's have a look for a job as a geography teacher.
Wow.
Yeah. Geography teacher jobs.
Because 30k is not a hell of a lot at all anymore. You'd struggle to live on that. You'd need to be living with a partner who was earning similar in order to be able to
Minimum starting salary 31,000.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe people will comment and respond.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Be interested to get.
Oh, there's a surprise. Look, most of these haven't got salaries on them like adverts do. Oh, there you go. Pay scale 31 to 39,000.
Okay. Yeah, that's not a lot to put up with several classes of miserable kids who don't really want to be there, I suppose.
36 to 53.
Okay, so that's a bit more.
High school though, that one.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Geography. I mean, who teaches geography? Are the geography teachers? What have you done with geography?
I did geography GCSE, and I even took it at A level, even though I didn't sit the exam. I enjoyed it, and I think
What is it?
What is it? It's. I mean, at that level, it's studying coastline erosion, that kind of stuff. You know,
fault lines.
It veers into geology a bit. I just found it interesting because it was one of the subjects I could get my head around and do well at. I think was one of the only reasons I picked it. I struggled with things like maths. I couldn't be bothered with English because it just involved reading a lot of books, which, because of my dyslexia, I found that quite tricky.
Yeah, you like reading books now?
I do like reading books now, but I didn't actually start reading books until I was in my mid-20s. I couldn't. I had that typical dyslexia thing, is I couldn't move down to the next line. You just keep reading the same line. It drives you nuts, so you give up. So I didn't, and then I got ill. I was off work for like 3 or 4 weeks, stuck in bed, And there was a book I really wanted to read, so I thought, sorry, I'm going to read it. And I just persevered. And then I went on a mission. I read every book that I had ever thought about for years. I'd ploughed through hundreds of books. And then it all stopped. And I've only recently started trying to read again, and I'm finding it hard again. It's a mission. But that's more, as we were talking about earlier, getting away from the distractions of social media and life
masturbation.
in general. Yeah. Mainly TV and social media, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
In school life in general, I do remember having a real sort of a moment, I suppose. I was in the lower sixth. I'd left school at the end of the fifth year. I'd got a job, decided very quickly that wasn't for me. Went back to school in the sixth form, a couple of weeks late. I thought, right, I'll get some A levels instead. Don't really think I had any intention of finishing. I just thought this will keep my mum and dad quiet. I was doing geography and economics. Was struggling in both because I wasn't very interested. And then I just thought to myself, if I could spend this amount of time every day doing something that was genuinely useful to me, like working on my music at the time, which I thought was the most important thing in the world, that might be worth doing. So I literally went to see the head of sixth form. I said, can I bring in my drum machine and sampler and my Atari ST and set it up and just work on that instead? And obviously he went, no, that'd be mental. But at the time I just thought, why can't I learn something I'm interested in? Because then I'd put in loads of effort. And there was no opportunity for that then.
No. I did music GCSE, and there was a few things you had to do. One of them was you had to sing back pieces that they'd play to you. So you'd go in.
I remember that. Yeah.
And you'd be thinking,
repeat it.
yeah, it's not exactly Let It Be, is it?
No.
You know. And then they gave us, and I remember this distinctly, they gave us a poem by Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
You familiar with Edgar Allan Poe? Horror poet, called The Pit and the Pendulum.
I know that. There was a band called that in Stevenage.
And you had to write a piece of music to along to The Pit and the Pendulum, not like a song, but just to represent each. And I had my little 4-track.
Yep.
And I've got a wah-wah pedal, guitar. I think I've got an acoustic, and I was working out how to bounce it down. I'd got like a PSR 38, like a Yamaha, like a keyboard with speakers, not like, so you've got mono out into your, and you just sort of learn it, threading this stuff together. And I got a C, and they said the best bit was the end. Because there's a bit at the end. I'd worked out this bit of like minor finger picking, and it was quite sort of classical. And I'd managed to get a bit of string section in there.
No encouragement, no well done for writing a piece of music.
No.
I mean, most people on the planet can't do that.
I know, and it was, and I couldn't. That sticks with me to this day. There were two miserable music teachers, and they had no idea about anything outside orchestral stuff.
Yep.
And they had no interest.
Yep.
I've just had a memory. There was a young Irish teacher that came to join, and she put an Irish band together, and we were all guitar players.
Yep.
So she got us all in to do the. We did. Actually, we'd learnt. It was a Mark Knopfler song called "Local Hero."
Yeah, from the film Local Hero.
From the film Local Hero. Yeah.
Remember that?
There you go. So maybe music lessons were better than I remember.
But that whole story, what you said about there, about the absolute apathy towards what you produce, that sums up a lot of the problem, I think, with school and the issues with how much better would the world be, was certainly, from my point of view, if at some point someone recognised, oh, this guy can write songs. He's not much good at maths or English, but wow, he can write songs, he understands music. Let's take him out of this and let's make him focus on that, because he's really good at that, so he could end up making a living out of that, and we need more of that in our country because the music business is worth billions.
Yeah, no.
Let's do that.
What we need more of.
Let's shove them all
Yeah.
down the same funnel,
Yeah.
so that they're all accountable.
Yeah, the thick ones can go and work in the factories.
Yeah.
The medium clever ones can go and get
Yeah.
white collar jobs to control the ones that work in the factories.
Yeah.
And the really clever ones will push off to, red brick universities.
Yeah.
And they can go off and work in other countries.
Yeah. But it does, that's what it needs. It needs fixing like that. And I get it, that's a lot of work. But it wouldn't have to be that hard. You just have schools which focus on creative skills. You know, maybe they do some music, they do some filmmaking and graphic design, that kind of stuff. Right, anyone that shows a natural aptitude for that, let's send them there now for the next few years. And, you know, if you're really good at all the academic stuff, there'll be a place that excels at that. And do it that way. And, you know, and if there's people that are good at neither, but they're good at something practical, maybe they could be, you know, we desperately need tradespeople. We need plumbers, we need builders, we need carpenters.
I was about to say,
Teach 'em.
the people that I know best from school, that I know from school who've done best with their lives,
Yeah.
have been tradespeople.
Yeah. Because A, there's always a demand. They generally will end up running their own businesses, charging a lot of money because there's a high demand.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true.
They charge more for a day's work than a sound engineer. It comes back to running a band, doesn't it? Going and doing these corporate gigs for companies. You're charging too much. Okay,
Yeah.
well, why don't you try and go and get 6 plumbers
Yeah, exactly,
to come
yeah.
out with all of their kit
Yeah.
and get them in at lunchtime on a Saturday and get them to stay till 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
See how much those 6 plumbers charge you.
It's the same with everything creative.
Yeah.
Everything creative is undervalued, and until it's absolutely important. I mean, you know, I book a lot of shows, and I would say there's a percentage every year of new clients who have no clue what a show costs, and when they find out, they're like, can't believe it. And I'm like, but think about it. You know, we have to turn up with 14 people generally. Sometimes it's up to 20, depends how big a thing we're doing. They all need to earn a living. You know, they need to eat.
They've
need
all
somewhere
spent
to
money
sleep.
learning how to
Yeah.
earn their living.
They've spent years getting to be good enough
Yeah.
that you want to pay to
Yeah.
book them, so that
They've
people will
bought
pay to
themselves
come and see
equipment
them. Yeah.
that's worth them playing.
Exactly. It's a whole thing. It takes a lifetime to be good, and then people just kind of expect to show up for free because it's fun, you know. And that's an issue. Luckily, there's enough work that does pay, but there's a lot of people out there that are very shocked by it and don't ever really want to go down that road. Yeah, it's frustrating. But you get the same thing with, I feel it's anything vaguely creative. I think with filmmaking stuff, you know, if you spent a lot of time learning how to, you know, use a camera really well and to capture sound, that's a lot of skills you have to learn. You know, you've learned how to film things that could be really useful, you know, for corporate clients or for music videos or whatever else. Someone else will come along and undercut you by, you know, 1,000%. Because they've convinced you that, you know, for some reason they can do just as good with their iPhone or whatever. And there's a chance that that's slightly true, but not to the level that you probably need. And that is a lack of education in that if people understood that these kind of skills were just as important as academic ones.
You know, again, you see, there was academic is one thing, and again, I think the academic thing is going to change with that. You know, the information revolution, the digital revolution we're going through.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
My mum used to work with what she politically incorrectly called naughty boys.
Yeah.
So there were young men generally,
Yep.
15 or 16, that had been expelled from school.
Yep.
Or numerous schools. They would be disruptive generally.
Yep.
And they were sent to a special unit, and they used to have things like fresh air breaks.
Fresh air breaks. I used to have them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the most important lessons she said that they used to have was sex and relationships.
Yep.
So it's literally teaching young people,
How to be people.
yeah,
Yeah.
who've come from a background that you and I were lucky that they weren't lucky enough to have a background that you and I were.
Yeah.
You know, parents.
Yeah.
And they have to be taught how to be people and how to treat other people.
Yeah. Well, see, that's another thing. That's probably missing a bit from regular school. The
What
other-
about how to feed yourself?
Yeah, that cooking. I mean,
Yeah.
I know you get a bit of that, but not really.
No,
not
but
properly.
yeah,
The
I mean-
finances, I always see.
I dipped strawberries in fucking chocolate, mate, in cooking classes. I wasn't taught the difference between starch and carbohydrates, you know.
No, but I think the finances.
Nutrition.
The amount of people I know that are absolute car crashes with their finances. Because you're expected to just pick that up yourself at
Yeah.
some point. There's no one that sits you down and explains what different bank accounts are,
No.
how interest rates
No.
work. I remember there was some survey a few years ago now. I asked people, just people in the street, do you know what APR means when you take out a loan? Do you know what the APR figure is? And like loads of people said, oh, I thought it just stood for April. It's like, what?
But this is the point, and this kind of comes back. I don't want to get onto the borders of conspiracy.
Yeah.
But it comes back to is it suits.
What, keeping us all stupid?
Yeah.
Maybe.
It does.
Maybe.
You're just going to all wear the same because you're all going to go do the same jobs.
I don't like
think
that.
I don't. No, I don't like it.
No.
But don't think that you're anything special because you're not.
Yeah.
Because you're not at Eton.
Yeah.
You're not going to be. You're not going to be in footlights, and you're not going to go into politics.
Yeah.
So just wear your fucking green and yellow
Yes,
tie.
stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane and be thick and do as you're told.
There's a lot of that. I think there is a lot of that. And do you know what? And here's an interesting thought on all of that added up together. Maybe it's good then that you have to break out yourself. If you're different and it doesn't work for you and you want to go down a different route, you can, but it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah, well,
break out.
beyond the struggle. So, what are the two options either side of what we both went through, which is, I guess, secondary comprehensive?
Yeah.
The two options there are homeschooling or grammar school.
Yep.
I got offered to go to a grammar school. I passed an exam,
Blimey.
but I was going through stuff with my family and didn't, refuse to put my foot down, refuse to go.
Wow.
Pretty bad, maybe a bad mistake looking back.
I didn't even know that was still a thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it may not be, but
No,
you
what's
know,
that?
I'm 45 years old. So what's the alternative? Do you go? The homeschooling thing's no good because you don't learn that you have to roll with the. That's the
No.
other thing about schools. You get bullied,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you bully other people, and you meet girls, and you get.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it.
You learn all of the the things that you have to
true.
roll with in life.
You do. And that might be more important than ever right now. Kids are very isolated, aren't they? A lot of the time. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult, isn't it? How do you fix it? I just think if they could just fix the bit about helping people that have got skills in areas that don't fit into the norm, I think that would be a big step.
But that could be perceived as, identifying individuals. And then you could say, well, everybody's individual. So you'd have to identify the special
not.
skills. Yeah. Let me have a look at that tattoo on your neck. What does it say? It says individual. Why did you get that? Well, all my mates had one.
Yeah, exactly that, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
individual.
No, you're not. Yeah, there's no easy answer, is there?
No, there's not. But and this is, and it comes back down. I've referred to this quite a few times recently. The book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Shit.
Not giving a fuck. You
Not
get that
giving a
wrong every
fuck,
time.
do I? Yeah, well, I'm trying to be polite, probably. I think it might be giving a shit on Netflix. Anyway, I'm probably getting it wrong. But it's picking your battles.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, most
You know.
of life comes down to that in the end.
And what you're not going to change school.
I don't know. I think it desperately needs it.
Yeah, but you're not gonna.
It's got to happen at some point.
I've got to say, it seems to me, every superstructure in
Yeah.
society,
Yeah.
from government to church and religion
Yeah.
to school, needs to be, to the police force,
Yeah.
needs to be changed in the UK.
Yeah, it does.
But none of it's going to be.
I don't know. I think slowly it will be. I think if we disappear.
You know what we're going to end up?
50
We're
years-
going to end up with Nigel Farage
Well, yeah.
as
But they're not being funny. I can't stand the bloke, and I don't like his politics. But it would be someone like that who just wants to think, do you know what? I've got nothing to lose. I'll change all the things people want changed.
well. Look, but that's Donald Trumpism, isn't
I know
it?
it is. Yeah, it's terrible.
And they've
But-
sent him into. There's an article in the Telegraph. He's sending these people into. Sorry, stop hitting the table.
It's only about 50 times in this one.
He's sending people into these negotiators
Yeah.
in to meet Putin. Because obviously Putin, he's supposed to be bringing a ceasefire within a day of his presidency.
Yeah, right.
And he's sending these negotiators in to meet with Putin and his negotiators,
Yeah.
who are hardcore, 20 years serving
Yeah.
in Russia,
Yeah.
political game players. They are bureaucrats, they are ambassadors.
Yeah.
Trump's team goes in, right? They're like real estate moguls, you know.
Yep.
They have absolutely no concept of not only how to conduct yourselves in a political situation, but what the political landscape might look like.
No.
And they are seen as a joke.
Yeah.
As a joke. They think they're going in there Billy Big Balls because they're backed by Donald Trump. And Putin's like,
Yeah. What are you doing there?
yeah.
Yeah. No, but that's what happens. You know, literally the populism thing is going to ruin all of politics for that reason. You're going to end up with people that were successful in some random business being given cabinet offices, and they just won't understand what their job is, let alone how to be good at it.
But the other side of that, the flip side of that, is what happens in the UK government, where you get people like David Cameron,
Yeah.
given a budget of billions and billions of pounds, running, you know, our nuclear deterrent,
Yeah.
you know, in control of public spending. He's never controlled a budget in his fucking life.
No.
And they say the very desire to become a politician should be the immediate
Yeah, it should
thing
be-
that stops
yeah,
you
you're out.
ever
You're not
becoming
allowed.
one.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you've gone through business controlling budgets and staff and all of this sort of
No.
stuff and learned how to
That's-
control this kind of stuff. You
That-
you get voted in because,
But
you know,
the-
you fucked the pig's head. Am I allowed to say that? Probably not.
Really?
He did. That was the big thing, wasn't it? That was the big story because they go through these things at these public schools that we're not party to.
No. But traditionally, that's what the civil service is there for. They're there to do all of that because they know the politicians aren't going to know anything about it. So it's their job to do the actual number crunching behind the scenes. They're the ones that are supposed to be the experts. And the politicians are the face. Oh, yeah, right, I like that policy. We'll do that. That will be my idea. That's literally what the civil service is for.
Do you think that's how it works?
Yes, that's
Do you?
exactly how it works. David Cameron didn't put a
But
budget
that's how he
together
ended
for
up.
anything.
That's how we ended up with.
That's not how he got the job. He got the job by...
That's how we ended up with Brexit. Going to public vote.
It all happened because that whole thing is a whole other show. But there was, you know, what's his name? Forgot his name now. The guy that basically masterminded the whole thing. He knew that this thing would be possible to be swayed a certain way. You just need a figurehead to back it, and he got someone, didn't he? He got Boris Poxy Johnson stuck his arm
You're thinking
up.
about Dominic Cummings, are you?
Yeah, they just needed a figurehead, and they got one.
Well, that wasn't anything to do with Brexit, was it? Brexit was Cameron, and he quit the day after.
No, do you not remember who was championing Brexit? Who was the person that said, "I'm gonna get behind this"?
David Cameron.
No, David Cameron was the one that agreed to have the referendum.
Yeah.
But the person that was championing Brexit
Was the Mayor of London,
was Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
He's coming back, apparently. I was saying to my dad, apparently,
help us.
they're going to bring Boris back. And I thought, God, do you think you'd be unlucky enough to go through one lifetime with Donald Trump as president of the US and Boris Johnson as...
can't have that.
You can't, surely that can't happen twice in one lifetime.
I think it might. It's terrifying, but it's true. What I don't get, what I genuinely don't get, why do these people who are, every time you've been a PM or you've been a president of a major superpower, by the time you're done, whether it went well or whether it didn't, a byproduct of that is that you are stupendously rich. I know they don't get paid that much, but they are
Can you
given
stop
opportunities.
tapping the... You keep
I know,
tapping.
it's me now.
Yeah.
They are given opportunities to earn a
Yeah,
shit ton of
after
money.
dinner speaking.
Yeah, exactly. They make a fortune. Why then do they want the job back? I mean, what's wrong with it? Retire. Do something really stress-free and don't get shouted at by 3/4 of the world every day.
I don't know.
Baffling.
Best Prime Minister we ever had? Hugh Grant in Love Actually.
I'd go with that. Yeah. Fictional, but yeah. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Right, we've disappeared off piste, but I think we covered more than enough.
How much we hate school.
Yep.
I'm going to have to send my daughter to one soon.
Well, yeah, all mine are done now, but it was a frustrating experience the second time around.
I've got
Otherwise-
parents' evening coming up.
Oh, see,
It's
that
like
was hard.
you're never
for
going
me.
to say to me, yeah, she's a bit thick actually. She's I'd probably give up. I'd probably drive into the countryside,
Yeah.
find a ditch, just drive home.
It's so bad. I literally was up to school a fair amount with certain of my offspring.
Were you?
Yeah, because I still harbour the anger towards secondary school. They're still behaving like dicks. They're still tarring people with the same brush. They're still not giving the right opportunities, and they're still behaving like there is. It's like overly what's the word? Authoritarian. In the secondary school that my kids went to, there was one of my son's friends was a black kid. He was he still is a really nice kid. But obviously he has afro hair. So for the sake of convenience, his mum used to shave his head because it's difficult to deal with afro hair. There was a rule at the school that you couldn't have a shaved head, but they didn't take into account the fact that his ethnicity kind of that should be allowed. They put him in isolation all day, every day, for days, until his hair grew. Sat in a room on his own. And I'm like, that's just wrong. My kids had it a few times. They put you in isolation. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you teaching kids? It really, really wound me up. I was constantly up there arguing with the head.
Well, I think, actually, just before we do end, I think what you've raised there is another issue, is that there is this sort of disparity, because you use the term, you had a teacher who was your...
Oh, head of discipline.
Head of discipline. So schools aren't able to discipline kids anymore because the parents go up there and stick up for the kids.
Yeah.
Every time I was bollocked by a teacher,
Yeah.
my parents didn't stick up for me.
No, well, I never told my parents. I was too
My
scared.
parents used to get called into school.
Yeah, mine did a few times, but it would have been more, I think, if I'd have been a bit more honest with them, but I was too scared.
I don't know whether I'll get... There's a story. My youngest brother, and I won't say his name, got caught with a certain device for smoking marijuana in his rucksack. A bag bottle. I don't know if you remember what they were. Can we discuss this?
No, yeah?
Yeah,
Well,
and it was basically it's a carrier bag.
Yeah.
You cut the bottom off a bottle.
I remember.
Yeah, you tape a carrier bag onto the bottom of a bottle. You
Yeah.
put foil on the lid.
Yeah.
You light the tobacco.
Yeah.
Pull it out. It fills it up. You know. Anyway,
It's like a turbo
my turbo bong. My younger brother sees fit to offer this around to friends on the bus on the way home from school. It might have been the way to school. Anyway, the headmaster phones my father, says, your son's in trouble. We've found this device for smoking marijuana in his bag. I'd like you to come in so that we can discuss things. And my dad said, obviously mortified, my son's involved in drugs. He's obviously, And he said he went to school and went into the headmaster's office.
Yep.
And he said, the headmaster sat down. He said, and the office just stank of weed. He said, we're very, we found this in your son's bag. And he said, my dad sort of looked at it, looked back at the headmaster, looked back at it. And they were both like, and there was an element of, obviously it was serious because you have to take these things seriously, but the headmaster was obviously understanding of, and there was some mutual agreement that there did have to be some discipline, but there was mutual agreement on what discipline would be implemented. But I think very often you would get very defensive parents, don't you pick on my Johnny, going in and
Yeah. Well, I think that's, I probably was that parent a lot of times.
And just to stick with my younger brother Bob for a moment, because obviously he's an educator, he's a music teacher.
Yeah.
And he's been putting young primary school children through he does the rock school grades.
Yep.
So we market it's not a music school, it was a music school, but how many people do you know that say, I wish I'd learned to play the piano when I was a kid? Wish I'd had singing lessons. Anyway, so we sort of market on that a bit. We sell to the parents, not to the kids. So, but he's putting these children now, they're on his V drums and on their guitars and on their bass. They're getting distinctions and they're learning to play stuff on their instruments that they're going to carry with them for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
They're always going to be able to play a G chord on a guitar.
Yep.
If you get to grade 6, you're always going to be able to play whatever it is you learn to play on the drums. And that's the beauty of teaching. Let's leave it on a positive, is that you're giving people skills for life.
Yeah.
And let's hope that even if school is as miserable as it clearly was for you, and it definitely was for me, it was the worst time of my life.
Yeah,
it was the worst time of my life.
Pretty shit. Yeah.
Let's hope that at least some people come away with
That is a good positive note to end on. So, you can watch us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, and we're also on Instagram and we're on TikTok. And all the links are up here and down here, and we'll see you next time.